The air on the hangar deck felt like steel, cold, sharp, with a hum just under the skin. Somewhere above, a catapult launch cracked through the hull like a distant gunshot. The carrier moved beneath them, steady but alive. Eleanor Grant stood near the rear of the group, 81, slim, composed. Her khaki jacket matched the tone of the ship around her. The leather portfolio she held looked older than some of the crew. She didn't fidget, didn't speak, just looked. The ensign leading the tour had the voice of someone used to being ignored. His script rolled smooth and practiced. USS Enterprise, CVN 80, Gerald R. Ford class, commission 2027, nuclear-powered, home to over 4,000 sailors. He gestured toward the elevator as it rumbled past. Carrying jet parts and 2 yellow shirts, no one looked directly at her. Most of the group were older. Spouses, widows, retired officers in civilian dress. One had a ball cap with USS Ranger stitched in sun-faded gold. Another leaned on a cane with a Vietnam unit pin. They shuffled, chatted, stopped for photos. Eleanor moved with them, quiet and separate. Petty Officer First Class Hartley offered her an arm as the group approached. The ladder to the flight deck. She declined it with a nod. No words. Climbed each step with precise rhythm, slow but fluid. At the top, the air changed. The flight deck opened wide like an aircraft battlefield. FA-18E Super Hornets lined the starboard edge. One taxiing toward Catapult 2, the sound hit in pulses, deep and rhythmic. Deck crew worked in dance-like coordination, color-coded uniforms cutting through the gray. Yellow shirts waved, pointed, crouched. Red shirts rolled ordnance carts. Green shirts vanished into steam and jet wash. Aviation boatswain's mate Chief Ramirez waved the group to the side. His tone had edge. Safety came first, even for guests. Eleanor complied, stepping where he pointed without hesitation. She watched him, not the jets. Watched how his boots braced when the wind shifted. Another Super Hornet launched. The shockwave passed through her coat and rattled the old brass snap on her. Portfolio. She didn't flinch. The others did. A woman clutched her scarf. One man turned away. She didn't speak when a young lieutenant asked if she wanted to see the island. Tower. Just turned toward it and started walking. The motion was automatic, not rushed, measured, controlled. The corridor to the flight operations station smelled of sweat, lubricant, and fresh coffee. She moved through it like she knew where it bent. Which hatch was heavy? Which bulkhead carried vibration? Inside flight ops, screens flickered with telemetry, deck cam feeds. Weather overlays, personnel stood in groups, speaking low and fast. Nobody offered her a chair. She didn't look for one. She stood near the back, hands lightly resting on the edge of the portfolio. An ensign walked past and noticed her ID badge. Paused just long enough to squint. Widow, civilian, dependents tour. He smiled, then disappeared. On one screen, a HUD displayed the approach vector of an inbound aircraft. Turbulence, crosswind, a slight dip and roll before the pilot corrected. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. Her hands didn't move. Lieutenant Commander Neal spoke to the group in clipped tones. Explained launch cycles, recovery windows, safety margins. Mentioned simulations, training thresholds. Eleanor blinked once. Slow. The storm hadn't arrived yet, but the air outside smelled different now. She knew that scent, salt, pressure, temperature shift. It was coming. And they didn't see it yet. She stayed silent, watched the sky through glass, listened to the calm inside the storm. The tour moved on. She followed. No one noticed her fingers brush the steel edge of the bulkhead. No one noticed how she glanced once toward the flight status board, then to the ceiling, then back to the sea. Her mind was already ahead of them. But she said nothing. Not yet. The corridor narrowed without warning. Pipes lined the overhead. A sudden rise in deck plates angled the floor near a watertight hatch. Eleanor dipped her head half a second before the pipe met it. Her left hand grazed the bulkhead. Fingers open, light, keeping balance without gripping. A junior sailor came around the corner too fast. He slid to avoid her. She had already stepped to the side. The movement was smooth. Reflex, not reaction. The tour pressed on. Conversations floated ahead, low and casual. A man asked about the arresting gear. Another joked about getting lost on the way to the mess. Eleanor said nothing. Her pace never changed. She moved up a ladder well with slow precision, 1 foot planted, one hand anchored, weight controlled. At the top, she turned without hesitation and stepped into the next junction. No pause to reorient, no confusion at the signage. Chief Warrant Officer Blake passed her near the aircraft maintenance bay. He noticed how she paused before the yellow line, how she looked up toward the overhead crane before it moved. He didn't say anything, just watched. She walked past a locked compartment, her head tilted, barely. Not enough to draw attention, but enough to clock the old label beneath the new auxiliary comms. The label was faded. Most wouldn't have seen it. A whistle shrilled behind them. General quarters drill. The lights flicked red. Crew snapped into motion. The tour froze. One woman clutched her purse. A man cursed and ducked too late under a pipe. Eleanor moved to the nearest alcove. Shoulders close to the wall. Feet spread for balance, not hiding, just out of the way. A pair of sailors hustled past, arms full of harness gear. One turned to look back. The woman hadn't flinched at the alarm. Hadn't asked what was happening, just stepped out of the kill zone. The tour resumed 5 minutes later. People muttered. A few laughed. The guide apologized. Eleanor said nothing. Her coat brushed a fire extinguisher mount as she moved. She didn't look at it. Just adjusted her step before the bracket touched her elbow. On the catwalk leading to the flight deck, the noise built in layers. Wind. Metal. Radio crackle. Engines. Her eyes didn't squint. Her footing didn't change. The deck vibrated beneath her shoes. She adjusted weight without shifting stance. Senior Chief Bartlett caught her in his peripheral. Civilians usually stayed close to the bulkhead, unsure where to walk. She moved like someone who had memorized the safe path. Her eyes swept the catapult, not the view. Another Super Hornet taxied into position. Its nose dipped and rolled slightly as the deck pitched. Crew knelt near the holdback bar. A green shirt gave final signals. Steam curled. Eleanor watched the blast deflector rise. The catapult officer raised an arm. Her eyes narrowed. She tracked the aircraft, not the spectacle. The angle. The lift. The weather shimmer. The way the launch bar clicked into shuttle lock. The jet leapt forward. Her coat rippled in the aftershock. The sound tore past them. One woman gasped. A man stepped back. Eleanor didn't move. Her eyes stayed fixed on the shrinking tail of the aircraft. Her jaw set. Not from tension, from memory. She didn't speak, didn't explain. Just turned, checked the deck wind flag, and walked on. The meteorology center was smaller than expected. Packed tight with consoles, map overlays, live satellite feeds. 2 sailors monitored storm tracks. A young lieutenant adjusted sliders on a touchscreen, moving a projected impact cone farther west. The room hummed with soft voices and filtered air. Eleanor stood just behind the group. She glanced once at the feed, noted the sea surface temperature along the storm's flank. She spoke without raising her voice. "Have you corrected for the wind shear drop between deck level and 200 feet?" The lieutenant half turned. His smile was polite, tired. "Ma'am, the models account for all altitudes." She nodded, looked again at the data, her voice even softer. "Then your shear factor's lagging 2 hours behind the satellite pass. That front's not stalling, it's wrapping." His fingers paused on the screen. His smile slipped, barely. "These projections are reviewed hourly," he said. "Our systems are calibrated to the minute." Eleanor didn't reply. She looked at the deck vectors, noted a drift. Her hand rested on the leather strap of her portfolio. A petty officer cleared his throat and pointed at another screen. The conversation moved on, but the lieutenant checked the timestamp again, quietly. In the Combat Information Center, the lighting dropped to blue. Screens glowed with tactical feeds. Icons slid across radar scopes. Surface contacts, air assets, defensive arcs. The group clustered around a station where Lieutenant Commander Rhodes explained radar queuing protocols. He pointed to integrated fire control loops, highlighted data streams. He sounded practiced, efficient. Eleanor raised a hand slightly, her tone steady. "Are your SPY-6 panels running concurrent sweep with the AN-SPQ-9B for sub-horizon return?" Rhodes blinked. "That information is classified, ma'am." She looked at the screen, then back at him. I'm asking about the unclassified sync lag between uplink and terminal Q. On that setup, your returns tend to smear unless you rephase the frequency band under multipath scatter. He stared for a second longer than he should have. Ma'am, perhaps we can focus on the parts of the tour intended for our guests. She gave a small nod, looked again at the screen. She was quiet. Another officer leaned toward Rhodes, his voice a whisper, but not low enough. What's a civilian widow doing asking about radar coherency? Rhodes didn't answer. A rating farther down the console frowned. He'd caught the question. He remembered her from the weather center. Her comments had matched shifts he'd just logged. Eleanor turned slowly and walked to another station. She didn't touch anything. Just watched. On one panel, aircraft icons cycled into a holding pattern. Fuel levels dropped with time. Storm bands rotated in from the southeast. No one spoke to her. She watched the sweep, listened to the faint static of real-time updates. The room didn't move, but something shifted. Unease, thin as thread, wound through the air. She stayed 5 minutes longer, then walked out. No one stopped her. But 3 people watched her go. One adjusted his collar. Another rubbed the back of his neck. Behind her, the radar icons flickered. One return blinked off and on again. Then held. The sweep rolled past. The tension didn't ease. It never had. It had just gone unnoticed until now. The cloud layers on the radar screen had shifted again, faster, tighter. Eleanor stared at the arc of the typhoon's eye wall. Its speed didn't match the earlier projection. Her lips pressed together. Her fingers moved. She adjusted for wind vector compression. In the weather station, Ensign Maddox leaned on the console. His tone stayed pleasant. Ma'am, we've got real-time integration with NOAA. The model is stable. She didn't argue, just pointed to the outer spiral bands curling tighter. The jets out there won't have a clean corridor in 2 hours. Less if the wave lift accelerates. He smiled again, smaller this time. Our system adjusts dynamically. Fuel reserve protocols account for worst-case recovery. She looked at the flight schedule taped to the glass. 6 birds up, standard fuel load, moderate headwind on recovery. She did the math again. Your numbers are off, she said. He straightened, shifted his weight. A technician behind him chuckled. Ma'am, I'm sure your late husband explained a few things, but we've got it handled. She didn't look at him. Her hand closed gently around the strap of the portfolio. She left the station. The temperature had dropped 0.5 degrees. The wind in the corridor carried moisture. On the catwalk, she crossed paths with Senior Chief Valdez. He was checking recovery systems. His radio buzzed. She waited for him to finish the call, then spoke. The crosswind drift is increasing. If the sea state hits 6, your pattern timing will fail. He didn't look up. Appreciate the concern, ma'am. But we've been recovering aircraft longer than you've been retired. That wasn't true. She'd done it before some of them were born. But she said nothing. He continued past her, didn't wait. On the observation deck, she pulled out a pad, ran calculations in pencil. The lead was dull. She didn't stop. Outside, the sea line was flattening. That meant surge. The jets were still airborne. She could hear their calls faint through the overhead relay. Their tone wasn't urgent yet. It would be. She walked down 2 levels to the comm station. A young petty officer logged tower data. She asked for the latest update from airborne fuel status. He glanced up, blinked. That's restricted, ma'am. She nodded, waited. He didn't say more. She turned away, walked the corridor again, made the calculations again. The numbers hadn't changed. Visibility would drop. Crosswinds would exceed tolerance. The deck pitch was going to lengthen. They wouldn't make it. She went to the flight ops ready room. 2 officers reviewed tablet data. She stepped close. Have you factored the storm's approach vector against the carrier's heading? During recovery, one of them looked up, blinked, his voice flat. Ma'am, this area's for ops personnel. She held his gaze. You'll need to adjust recovery timing to align with the pitch crest, not the flat. The other officer chuckled. We'll be sure to pass that along. She waited. No one said more. The fault line stretched thinner, no sound, no crack. Just quiet, weighted pressure. She returned to the upper deck, found a corner near the bulkhead, sat, opened the portfolio. Charts, drafts, calculations, handwritten, weathered. She circled a number, drew a new line, checked wind speed again. The air was colder now, the kind that slid under skin. Tides were rising. Nobody came. The storm was still hours away, but it had already arrived. Just no one else saw it yet. Rain struck steel in fast, uneven bursts. The deck trembled under sudden gusts. The horizon disappeared behind a wall of gray. Flight ops sounded different now, voices sharper, radios tighter. The calm cadence of routine was gone. On deck, yellow shirts moved with urgency. The arresting gear was tested twice. Catapults powered down. Recovery pattern initiated. Commander Brooks' voice cracked through the speakers. His tone stripped of polish. Fuel critical. No deck visual. Request immediate approach sequence. The carrier rolled again. Harder. The catwalk shuddered. Inside the tower, an ensign dropped a clipboard. A chief barked something about deck pitch. Another voice called for updated wind speed. Eleanor stood near the window, unmoving. Rain swept sideways across the plexiglass. She didn't flinch. Her hands were folded over the worn strap of her portfolio. Chief Ramirez passed her, then stopped. He turned back, looked closer. "Ma'am, you need to get below. This isn't a safe." The deck tilted again. A metal container slid 4 feet before someone caught it. Over comms, Phoenix 2 came in. Couldn't see the glide path, holding at 1200. Fuel almost gone. Eleanor spoke low. "They're approaching on flat pitch. That's suicide in this sea state." Ramirez stared. "What did you say?" She turned to face him. "Decks in an upward cycle every 19 seconds. You land them now or not at all." A lieutenant stormed up, soaked through. "Who is this?" Ramirez hesitated. "Some guest, widow." She corrected him, voice flat. "Commander Eleanor Grant, retired." Silence spread like oil across water. The lieutenant blinked. "You said, Commander." She met his eyes. "Carrier qualified. 263 recoveries." The air in flight ops changed. An officer turned slowly. Another one lowered his headset. The captain arrived 30 seconds later. Wet coat, boots heavy with seawater. His XO handed him a folder. It had red tabs, classification marks. He read it without speaking, page by page. Grant stood still, hands at her sides, eyes on the radar display. The room held its breath. When he finished, he looked up. "Ma'am?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The captain spoke again. "Is it true you wrote the storm pitch landing protocol?" Her nod was small. "Yes, but nobody called it that back then." He handed the folder back. "Your call, Commander." She stepped forward, took the headset. The deck was still pitching. The jets were still waiting. Her voice was calm, precise. "Phoenix lead. This is Commander Grant aboard Enterprise. I'm going to bring you in." There were no questions. Only silence. Then, "Roger that, ma'am. We're ready." And just like that, the storm had a new center. Wind tore across the deck. Rain hit like gravel. The catwalk vibrated with every wave. Water surged over the bow. The ship rolled 10 degrees to port. Eleanor leaned into the comm, her voice flat, clear. "Phoenix lead. Call your altitude. 700. Dropping. Fuel critical. Deck pitch timing's now 22 seconds. You're landing on the rise. Not the flat." "Roger. Copy that." "Wait for my mark. Watch your AOA. Don't chase the glide slope." She adjusted the frequency, glanced at the plot. The ship heaved again. Captain stood behind her, hands behind his back. He didn't speak. "Approach now. Ease throttle. You're high. Let her sink. Not too much. Hold. Now drop." Everyone in flight ops froze. No movement. The roar came through the hull. Arresting gear snapped. One wire, hooked clean. Phoenix lead on deck. Eleanor didn't react. "Next bird. Phoenix 2. You're up. Same pattern. Be ready to wave off. Visibility 0. Instrument only. Follow my voice. 600 feet. Right drift. Ease left. You're lined up. Let the wave help you. Throttle back. Glide down. Wait. Cut. Now." Second wire caught. 2 down. The crew didn't breathe. "Phoenix 3. You're too steep. Back off. Let her breathe. Nose up. Ride the wave. Deck dipped, then rose. Timing's off. Go around. You'll come again. 3 climbed, shook through turbulence. Fuel's low. Acknowledge. Stay in the stack. You're next. Phoenix 4. Come in slow. Ride the pitch crest. That's your window. Wheels down, low sync. Trust the rise. Good, good. Let it ride. Hold. Drop. Slam. Hooked. 3 in. Phoenix 5. Fuel state. 15 minutes, max. Plenty. Focus now. AOA looks good. Centerline drift. Let her slide in. Don't fight the motion. Deck surged upward. Hit it now. 5 slammed down. Arrested. 5 in. 3 again. She narrowed her eyes. Winds shifted. Gusts from port bow. Compensate. Shift heading 3 degrees. You'll feel it. Roger. Angle correct. You're light. Add throttle. Now drop. Hook missed. Go around. Damn it. Don't talk. Just reset. 1 more. 3 circled. Came back hard. Deck rolled again. Line up. Hold vector. This is it. Wait. Now. Gear caught. 6 jets. 6 down. Silence. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The storm still raged. But something else had broken. And everyone in that room knew it. The ocean calmed by morning. Wind fell to a breeze. The deck dried in patches, steam rising where sunlight touched steel. The storm had passed, but nothing on board felt settled. Eleanor sat in a narrow room 2 decks below the flight ops tower. Her portfolio lay open, pages covered in pencil lines and notations. She turned each sheet with care. Her handwriting was tight, precise. She recorded wave patterns, recovery angles, fuel burn variances, then cross-referenced deck telemetry with aircraft approach data. No words wasted, no emotion shown, only numbers, timings, evidence. Captain Wexler read the report without interruption. She waited. He finished the last page, closed the folder. She spoke before he could. The systems worked as designed, the people did not. He nodded once. She continued. Weather projections were accepted without manual review. Deck officers deferred to computer tolerances instead of visible deck motion. Senior personnel dismissed direct observational input because it came from an unrecognized source. The captain looked toward the window. She did not. In the days that followed, internal reviews began. Lieutenant Maddox was reassigned to a shore-based forecasting unit. Additional certification required. Lieutenant Keene, who'd laughed, received a formal reprimand for unprofessional conduct. He didn't argue. Senior Chief Valdez stepped down from flight deck operations. Reassigned to training command, his report acknowledged procedural rigidity. He used the term blind confidence. Eleanor didn't ask for it. She submitted a second document, 30 pages, titled Recommended Revisions to Carrier-Based Emergency Recovery Training. Protocols. It was forwarded to Fleet Aviation Command. Her tone stayed neutral. Real-time weather variability must be trained using outdated conditions, not just current models. Knowledge from legacy systems and personnel should be cataloged before lost to retirement. Scenario-based simulations should include failures of predictive software. No headlines, no ceremony. She moved from room to room as the ship returned to routine. No longer ignored. Not revered, just seen. In the ready room, one young lieutenant stood at attention when she entered. She told him to sit, then handed him her old chart compass. Don't memorize the numbers. Understand what they mean. He didn't speak, just nodded. The captain joined her near the bow that evening. No formal words, no salute. Just silence. 2 officers, 1 active, 1 retired. Looking at the sea that nearly broke them, she handed him 1 final envelope. It's all yours now. I'll be on shore before the next launch cycle. He accepted it. No handshake, no gratitude. Only wait. The right kind. The necessary kind. The sky was clear this time. Calm sea, straight deck. Nothing moved except the jets and the wind. Eleanor stood near the edge of the flight line, hands behind her back. She wore her uniform, no medals, no name tape. Just the patch on her left shoulder, Carrier Air Wing 1. The deck crew knew who she was. They didn't say it, didn't have to. One yellow shirt gave a small nod as he passed. She returned it. Nothing more. The pilot stood in formation farther aft. Fresh flight suits. Wings pinned hours ago. Their helmets were clipped to their hips. Their eyes drifted to her when they thought she wasn't looking. She walked along the catwalk as the first jet powered up. Steam hissed from the launch port. The Super Hornet crept into place. Its nose dipped once, then locked. Behind her, an ensign approached, barely 20, flight qualified. Still lean from training. He cleared his throat. I studied your protocols, the ones for storm recovery. Saved me during a sim in Pensacola. She looked at him, held his gaze, then nodded once. He didn't ask for more, just turned and walked back. She stayed as the jet launched, then the next, 6 in total, all clean, all precise. No ceremony followed, no words over the PA, only the sound of turbines fading into the sky. She turned, walked across the deck, no hurry, no pause. A chief opened the hatch to the hangar bay, held it for her, didn't speak. She disappeared below deck, same stride, same silence, and the wind kept blowing over steel, as it always would.